I'm K D Adamson. I'm a futurist specialising in blue domain, the shipping and maritime industry. The way that maritime trains its seafarers, the way it recruits them, is going to change massively. It's not just maritime though. The reason that things are changing across all industries is because things are becoming information enabled. Moore's law taught us that computing will roughly double, the power of computing will roughly double over 18 months. And it's not just computing, it's about digital, it's about information enablement. Shipping is becoming information enabled, and that means it's about to experience the same exponential growth as opposed to linear growth that other industries are seeing. And with that comes an awful lot of not just breakthrough technologies, but interaction with broader megatrends. Those megatrends like new millennial values, millennials and Gen Zs, and also broader economic issues like the rise of 3D printing, resource scarcity. We've got a bit of a demographic time bomb coming up, and also it's likely we're going to have quite lower economic growth than a lot of people are looking at. So there's a whole variety of reasons why shipping is going to change. But the question you have to ask is, how do we take advantage of those changes rather than how are they going to be difficult for us? The most important thing actually is the correct mindset. We have an acronym that we use to describe this new sort of world that we're living in: volatile, uncertain, complex and ambiguous, VUCA, V-U-C-A. And if you can't really understand that that is the nature of the world you're living in, then you're not going to be able to cope with it. What we find increasingly in the shipping industry is that the structure of the industry is all about investing in assets, investing in ships, as opposed to really investing in delivering value to the end customer. And when things are volatile and uncertain, the one thing that you have to satisfy is the end customer, because with the transparency and the connectivity and all the other trends that we're seeing in shipping, the customer has always been king, but it's really properly becoming king now. And the only way really that shipping is going to adapt to this new environment is by stopping talking to itself and start listening to its customers. Big data is a buzzword in shipping, and yes, absolutely, it has a place in manning and training. Big data is about answering questions. And big data allows us to answer questions that have been previously impossible to answer. So it's not so much a technology wave. Big data is a business transformation wave. And it affects manning and training in some very significant ways. If you look at, for example, Videotel, talking to them, the amount of data that they've now got on the training events that they've delivered is in the millions. They're now able to pull out trends. They're actually able to see which sectors maybe are struggling and where ship operators need to target their training. And so they're not just delivering training events now, they're using big data to deliver big value back to the ship operator. Not that we've got this in maritime yet, but as an example, there are plenty of companies now who are using quite sophisticated algorithms to take data about the interactions of teams and use them to predict performance. So, for example, what these companies do is take lots of data about the individual team members, and then using their algorithms, they actually match different teams together. And the success rate that they have is something like 95% in guessing which teams are going to be the most successful. Now, those kind of big data and algorithm projects, what that could translate to in shipping could affect, you'd be creating high-performing bridge teams, for example. And also the other thing that you've got to realise is that as the connectivity is getting better and better in maritime, the idea of the crew sitting on a ship on their own in the middle of the ocean having to deal with everything is changing. Operating a ship is not just about the crew on board now. It's about interacting with shore staff, with charterers, with a variety of other stakeholders. And what big data can allow you to do is actually zero down on those relationships and see where things can be improved, where you can optimize. And so that's very, very important. Attracting talent in the future is a problem that isn't unique to shipping. This is something that is exercising an awful lot of people. The kind of skill sets that we're likely to need in the future are different than the ones that they are now. And what you find very often is people talk about the problem with shipping's image. We need to make shipping more visible. The only reason people don't engage with shipping is because they don't know it's there. And actually, I think there's a far more fundamental problem. I think the problem with shipping is that it doesn't really understand its core mission. For too long, all shipping has been doing is moving cargoes around and investing in ships. A lot of ship operators, ship owners will tell you the only time they make any money is when they buy and sell ships. And that's a problem when you want the image of shipping to be something that people engage with, because what we want from companies and brands is a mission and a purpose. And if you look at the really big brands that people engage with, it is because they have a mission. There is something that they're setting out to do, a transformative purpose, if you like. And shipping has yet to really understand that it needs to express that. So I think culturally, until shipping really decides what it's all about, it's going to have a problem with its image, because a lot of people see shipping at the moment as an industry where people take on the cheapest staff they can, they do things for the least cost they can, and they do the minimum of compliance with regulations. Now, please understand me, that isn't every shipping company, but there are shipping companies that do that, and that is the perception. And until we can really drive some improvement in the way that shipping operates, then it's going to have great difficulty with its image, because when people do look at it, what they see is an industry that they're not too impressed with. And that may be an accurate perception in some cases, it may be inaccurate in others, but until we improve things across the board, it's no good just to say shipping needs a better image. Shipping needs to behave better, and then it will have an opportunity to improve its image. In terms of specifically attracting talent, we have to understand the way that careers are likely to develop. My 11-year-old daughter started secondary school this year. It's possible she could live to 120. And it's quite possible that she could have 30 plus careers in her lifetime. Now, what we've done to date in shipping is we've identified people as young as we can, we've trained them, and we've tried desperately to keep them in the industry. And it looks like that really isn't going to be a sustainable model in the future. What we need to be doing is finding more engaging and flexible ways of working in shipping. We need people to come in and come out of the industry, and it also has an added benefit in that we'll get more diversity of thought, because another one of our problems is that unless you've got 30 years behind the mast, nobody wants to talk to you. And that is a problem when it comes to retaining people, because not everybody, and certainly not the millennials and the Gen Zs, are particularly keen on spending 30 years in the industry. They tend to want rapid promotion, they tend to want increased job satisfaction, and the idea of spending years at sea doesn't necessarily appeal to them. So I don't think it's just a question of how do we attract and how do we retain. I think it's a question of understanding how the entire world of work is going to change over the next 20 to 30 years. We're likely to see more change in the next 50 years than we have in the last 300. And that's not just in shipping, but shipping is going to be a part of it. I don't think there's any question at all that the skill sets seafarers are going to need in the future will be different. One of the really big topics is automation. Everybody's talking about the autonomous ship, but the real key to this is, yes, we will have unmanned ships at some point in the future, but we've got a very interesting transitional period now, moving from ships that may have very little automation to ships which are virtually autonomous but have people on board them. And if you look at the lessons of other industries, particularly aviation, issues like automation addiction, skill fade, which have come from pilots basically no longer flying planes anymore, that is a major problem for aviation. And I think shipping's at a point now where it can start recognising that early and bypassing it. There are different ways to approach automation, human-centred automation, using things like haptic feedback to actually interact with the automation rather than just being at the mercy of it. There are already trials showing what they call adaptive automation, where, for example, in an airliner, you would find that the computer will be actually sensing how engaged the pilot is and shift control backwards and forwards to keep skills intact and to keep people engaged. I think that's the model that we need to be looking at in shipping. We recognise that the human element is incredibly important, and increasingly we are reaching a point where people are saying, well, you know what, we could just get rid of the human, but the real smart play is to work out how you get the human and the machine to genuinely work as a team. It's in the optimization of that interface between automation and human that shipping's future lies. Because although we will have unmanned ships at some point, I'm not sure we're going to see an unmanned oil tanker very soon, not because it's not possible, but because generally speaking, the world is not going to be particularly keen on that idea. Biggest challenges. I think I mentioned mindset, and I think that's a really fundamental one. I think we need to open our minds a little more and learn lessons from other industries and try and learn lessons from our customers and from our suppliers, because that is something that shipping is finding difficulty with. We're moving into a far more collaborative world, and shipping does like to play its cards close to its chest, and it doesn't believe that sharing information and sharing data is a positive thing. Now, don't get me wrong, there are big issues around data privacy, but data has a value, and the generations coming up behind me understand that data is also a currency. You can buy things with data. And the shipping industry, traditionally, although it's big, it's quite fragmented. Trying to sell into the shipping industry, there are little pockets of ships, 5 ships, 10 ships, and then larger operators. But when you start looking at shipping in terms of the data that it generates, it becomes a very big and very interesting industry. And it's attracting the interest of people from outside. And so one of the challenges that shipping has is to develop a more data-centric mindset and actually start collaborating and taking lessons from other industries and seeing how they have used data to transform their business models, be that new multi-sided models based on exhaust data, or be it simply understanding the value of what they are dealing with day to day as they sit at the heart of all these logistics chains. Another massive challenge is cybersecurity. We sit at the heart of all these logistics chains, and we know that when it comes to cybersecurity, our biggest, I was going to say our biggest challenges, our biggest danger when it comes to cybersecurity is our employees and our suppliers. Shipping hasn't really got its head around the fact that you don't need to have credit card data, address data, scripts for the latest James Bond movie to be a target. Everybody is a target. This is hacking on an industrial scale, and shipping has to understand that it is extremely vulnerable. It's actually got to the point where it is posing a security threat. Ports are critical infrastructure. Ship operators are carrying cargoes for defense departments. We can't really afford any longer to assume that as long as we've got a firewall, everything's going to be okay. Cybersecurity is a downside risk of our dependence on technology, and it has to be managed. In a recent survey that Futurenautics undertook of over 3,000 crew, around about 40% said that they'd already sailed on a vessel that had been compromised by a cyber attack of some kind. 80% of them said they'd never received any training whatsoever or any advice about cyber hygiene on board ship. That is a challenge that could act as a brake on technology adoption in the shipping industry, and it's something that really has to be taken seriously.